Thank you, Holly, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you all had a restful 3-day weekend for most of you, most of us. And thank you all for joining us. So we are here today just to offer a casual office hour session. We don't have a presentation for you, but we really wanted to spend some time and be able to provide additional support, give you the opportunity to ask any questions. As you know, the CAEP program area reporting memo for 22-23 was just recently released on Thursday, November 9th. And so in that memo, it does provide the step-by-step instructions, guidance on what the state requirement is in reporting your hours of instruction. And so in that memo, there was an additional update that we included, new starting in 22-23. There was a couple of NOVA enhancements that went in. The memo does capture some of those enhancements that were captured. And so what we're really here to do today is give you the opportunity to answer or ask any questions, and for us with our room of experts to help address any questions or concerns that you might have. And I'm going to turn it over to Neil, who's going to give you a little bit of the history of what is the purpose of this requirement for program area reporting. Neil?
Thanks, Myra. Yeah, so for some of you who may remember, I think it was about 5 years ago, maybe even 6 years ago, legislative language was put in a trailer bill that asked or mandated that CAEP members break out the hours of instruction and expenditures by program area, hence the name program area report. And so as we've gone through the years, we've tried to make it easier, provided better data. I think on the K-12 side now, CASAS has a specific report for hours of instruction. We try to use federal definitions. So if you're a WIOA grantee, you're using the same definitions to define in-kind, things like that. On the community college side, we've worked through maybe using estimates because we know the hours of instruction that go into your 320 report don't break out program areas. So there's been some work done on that, allowing for estimates and things like that. So over the years, we've tried to work with you to make this not as difficult as it seemed, because our systems aren't set up to tease some of this data out. So, but this information is important. I know some people at the local level use this in their consortia and with local board members, things like that. So, like Myra said, today is just your opportunity to ask questions, maybe confirm some stuff, or demystify anything that's in NOVA. And with that, I'll turn it back to Holly as she opens it up for, I guess, questions, and we'll provide the answers. And if you want to go over the formatting for that.
Sure. So you mean, Neil, as far as formatting, how they're going to ask their questions?
Yeah.
Sure. So we don't have anything received in the chat as of yet. If you do have a question, feel free to type it. In an interest of saving time at this point, if anyone would like to ask a question, feel free to use your reactions to raise your hand, and possibly we can just call on you to ask your question directly.
And while we're waiting, I mean, if we don't get any questions, we do have experts in the room, so we could ask questions of the experts and start that priming the pump that way.
Sure. And I do see we have a question from Kelly. Kelly, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Kelly Henwood from San Diego Regional Adult Education Consortium. This is kind of a repeat question from, I don't know, Neil, this must have been at least 5 years ago, and maybe 6. But I just want to confirm. So as we're doing the report, we have parts of our CAPE plan have to do with things that are like student services, wraparound supports, like we've revised our onboarding system and providing supports for career planning and placement and things like that. So all these things are in our CAPE plan, but not necessarily under the 7 CAPE instructional areas. And so we developed a methodology for how we determine those costs by CAPE instructional program area. And I'd have to go back and pull up the email, Neil, but I just want to confirm that that is the right approach. So we're doing it based upon FTES when we have costs that are in student services or other program areas that aren't instruction related to CAPE.
Well, this
Is that confusing? Sorry.
Just to clarify, so your question is specific to the expenditure side or the hours of instruction side, or both?
Sorry, expenditure side. The hours of instruction side, that's no problem. That's easy for us to do. We've been able to do that. It's the expenditure side of things when we have allocated CAPE funds, sometimes through braided funding, to things that aren't in our instructional departments when we go into our accounting system.
Yeah.
So we've developed a methodology for how to do that. I just want to confirm we're on the right track to continue doing it that way.
And just another clarifying question. So these supportive service activities, are they funded by both CAPE and non-credit FTES, or maybe some other supportive service funding like EOPS or those other student support fundings? So,
yes, typically they're braided costs with other categorical funds that we have.
Okay.
That's what we call them, braided costs. So they
Right.
are for students in the CAPE instructional areas, which is why we do it using FTS as the methodology formula, but they are costs that are outside of just the instructional department. Yeah.
So just one last thing. So you are adding another category, because you can't add categories. Are you adding one like student supports or other state funds, or how are you reporting?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the expenditure side of the state report, we report all of our categorical funds as well as our apportionment funds, and so we do that on the
Okay.
well, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, Myra, I don't see anything that Kelly's doing wrong there. I think what she's doing is appropriate as she's unbraiding all the funds that go into supporting their students. What do you think?
Yeah, it sounds like that as well. I actually would want to tap into Harpreet or Jason and see if they've encountered this situation and how, any recommendations on what they've done at the local level to capture this level of detail.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a bit sick, so I don't know if you can hear me clearly, but my voice is a little rough today. But I just wanted to get clarity from Kelly when you're talking about like services data, right? That's like non-instructional. We're talking about non-instructional data. So my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was that the program area is only asking us to input instructional data. At least that's what we do within our institution and within our consortium. So I just wanted some clarity before I dig into this.
So you're asking me if it's for non-instructional supports or data. So it's actually for both. So we do have some costs that are in our research and planning department, and they are doing research and planning for CAPE projects, CAPE instructional programs. So, but not just the classroom-based instructional data. That's on the data side. Yeah.
Yeah. And Kelly's question is on the financial side.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I might call on Janet too, if Janet's okay with it, because I support our consortium on the program area data, so and not on the expenditure. So that's why I'm a little fuzzy, and I don't want to speak on something that I don't have 100% understanding of. So if Janet's okay with just providing some clarity on how we do it at our consortium, I would appreciate it.
I'm happy to. Good morning. Good morning, all.
Morning.
Hi. So typically what we do, we connect with our local district. We work together with our administrative team, both at NOCE and at the district level. And so what we do is to confirm how we spread out our leveraging of funds and how we include them in NOVA. And so, for example, if we are cross-grading or leveraging the resources, we typically add like a field like Neil was mentioning. And then, for example, let's just say SWP funds are not there, or SWP local project through LA OCRC or just OC Regional Collaborative. And then I input the amount on the leverage resources.
All right. So Kelly, does that help answer your question? I think you got a lot of information there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. And I would
Thanks,
just
Janet.
no problem, Neil. And I would just add, like, if just to be on the safe side, you can also add it on the when you're reporting your quarterly expenditures, there's a narrative portion, and you can say during Q2, you can then reference your leverage funding, that it also aligns with what you inputted on the expenditure or on the expenditure leverage side in NOVA. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. So we do have a question from Tim that came in the chat. It says there's a separate row for EL Civics causing confusion as EL Civics overlaps with ESL. Because the EL Civics and ESL are inseparable at some of our schools, it seems that it would require a new approach with attendance taking to separate them. Does it need to be separated? How is this info being used? And we may need to call on Jason Makavali and Harpreet Upal to see if EL Civics is a reportable line item for colleges. And then also Jay Wright, who will be able to answer the cost.
I can say from a TE point of view, it definitely should not be separated. 100% of the EL Civics hours should go in the row for ESL. But I'm not sure about Comus. I know when it started, there was an EL Civics course completion. I'm not sure anybody reports it or even knows what it is, but I do think that was the reason why that extra line was put in NOVA 4 or 5 years ago.
So Jay, if Tim just wanted to use the program hours report in TE, that would have all that.
Civics blank, put 100% of those hours in ESL.
Okay.
Okay, and do colleges report that separately?
Honestly, yeah, the way we've been doing it is we just dump it under ESL.
Okay.
Like we kind of just like all lump it in. Like technically speaking, there kind of is some sort of way to maybe kind of a little bit disentangle, but then you'd also be double reporting in a sense, because a lot of it is also on, like, basically 100% of our EL Civics is also under our ESL department if you want to double report it that way, but we've always just been dumping it all under ESL.
Perfect. Okay, I think that answers that question. Stephanie asks, how are institutions calculating instructional hours for 2 census reporting? We are doing both positive attendance and 2 census, but the 2 census area is kind of squishy.
I'm assuming Stephanie's from a community college.
Yes.
Okay. I think I would lob that over to Myra and the North Orange team.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Stephanie, for your question. So just to reiterate, how are institutions calculating instructional hours for 2 census reporting? We are doing both positive attendance and 2 census, but the 2 census area is kind of squishy. Yeah, that does sound a little tricky. I know that in the guidance, we do recommend or provide guidance around, reporting from the 320 reporting system. I know for the colleges, it gets a little bit tricky. I'm going to follow up with Harpreet for Jason, get some input. Most importantly, I think for me, the feedback that I'm hearing today is something that we definitely will be taking back at a statewide level on what is causing pain points, what are areas of improvement. There's this process seems to be, very stringent. There's a lot of pain points involved in it. And so for me, it's very helpful to hear what are those pain points for you all and how we can simplify that. We are open to continuous efforts of improvement, whether if it's in our system or guidance that we can provide to make this process a bit more easier for you all. And I'm hearing a lot of pain points around this, but Jason has his hand up. So maybe, Jason, are you able to provide some support in addressing Stephanie's questions?
Yeah, I mean, the way we've kind of been handling it is kind of the same way we've been doing our 320. It kind of helps out that we are kind of the ones who oversee our 320 report in a sense. So like what we kind of do is we take those alternative attendance accounting things, convert them to FTE, and then convert them back to hours from there in a sense. We kind of do look at the census base, so it's not like done at the individual level, but rather at the aggregate level of like how many so like if you wanted to parcel out the students, it might be a little bit more. Actually, we could do that too, but we've never really done it at that level. We've done it more at the aggregate. This is entire class level, and this is how many students were in this first census. This is how many students were in the second census. We convert those into hours per the attendance accounting formula, and then we report that as FTS. But for the program area expenditures report, we report that as hours. Where it actually gets really sticky, and where it actually really starts impacting your students, for example, is that this also comes up. I mean, we can't just think about reporting, but rather we also have to think about how it actually impacts our students, right? And one big thing is, for example, our enrollment verification for AB 540, right? So like what we do as a practice within our institution for us to be able to track it at the student level, what we kind of do is if a student is completely enrolled at the end of class or they received a grade or something that indicates that they've been enrolled in the class, we kind of just give them the full hours that are on the COR, and that's kind of what we give them for their AB 540 status, right? But otherwise, like it's just a separate process that we do that we keep in their academic history and in their on their transcripts as like how we actually manage so that we don't have our students left behind or not being able to request like AB 540 assistance or anything like that, right? So I mean, so yeah, that's kind of just how we've kind of been working it out for anyone who's been like in those online classes. Or we've also had instructors take attendance for those classes when they actually do submit work, so we also have some of those. So like so we kind of run a gamut. So like our first layer is that if a student is actively engaging in a classroom and the instructor is noticing that they are actually submitting work, we kind of just assign week by week hours. And then on top of that, if they happen to complete the class, we will just give them the full array of hours for their actual enrollment verification status.
Thanks, Jason. So, and I assume that is also for some of the classes that are have asynchronous components.
Oh yeah, anything that's asynchronous, more or less.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. There is another question, and it's kind of got multiple parts. Neil has been answering it, but I will just read it because I know from the TAP standpoint, we have received this question from multiple people. It says, Shannon said, almost all of our sites have enrollments, despite that there is no launch board data, according to the NOVA form saying there isn't any data. What should I write in the box that says, please explain any hours of instruction entered for program areas with no launch board data available, i.e. why there are enrollments? To which Neil answered, the auto-populated info is just info to show if you had students in that program area. For K-12 reporting of hours, please use the TE program areas report. And then I believe he followed up, yes, and said, please use TE data for hourly reporting for K-12 agencies and MIS FTES data for community colleges.
So I think what happens in Launchboard, if it goes below a certain number, and then it becomes identifiable information, if it goes below a certain amount. So if you have low number of students, it won't show up in Launchboard. It'll show up as, not available because they don't want to show that those smaller numbers of students. But Shannon, let me ask you a question. Is that student data showing up in TOPS Pro?
Yeah, so all of our information, I can get it all off TOPS Pro just fine. But when this new form, like for instance, I'm looking at Butte Valley. So it has K-12 success, that there's Launchboard data in there. It has a little check mark. But in our TOPS Pro, we didn't have any K-12 success. So I will be putting in 0 because we didn't have those hours despite it having Launchboard information. Or there's other examples where it's opposite. There's Launchboard information in there with that little checkbox. Or excuse me, there's not Launchboard information in there. So there's an X where it says Launchboard information available. And then, but I have tons of hours that, we serve students in, or had instructional hours. So then there's that new box at the bottom that says, please explain why you have enrollment when there's no Launchboard information. So that's where I get a little confused. Do I just write Launchboard isn't providing me information, even though
I would just say I'm using, whether it's TE or MIS or whatever data source you're using, just state the data source you're using and saying these are the numbers from that system. And I think that's fine, because in the hierarchy, all this data comes from either TOPS Pro or MIS, and then it's fed to the Launchboard data system. So sometimes in posting it on Launchboard, and I think we'll get to this question maybe and have more of an in-depth discussion with Ute's question. But that's kind of the hierarchy order. So I think you're fine, Shannon, just putting what you have from your primary data sources and then just listing that in the box, explaining, where you got the data from.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think that your explanation is accurate, because we have such small populations that maybe it's Launchboard's like, nope, you're too small.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it does that.
We know
Because
that
then they want to make sure you can't identify a particular student or a particular student population in a classroom if it gets down to the smaller level. So Myra, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, as far as if there's a smaller population, I know in Nova that's also something that we're dealing with as well, is ensuring that we're not violating FERPA regulations, and there is a set level number where we're not able to report if it's an X number below that. And so that could be a probable reason why you're not seeing those numbers. One of the things that we did try to do in Nova for 22-23 was allow some of those functionalities, such as that checkbox, because then now it allows you to include a narrative. And that's exactly what that's for, is if there is something that's not, the system's not going to be perfect. And I think that's where we did just want to reiterate that the Launchboard data is just, it's there for informational purposes. I think for us at the state level, we're going to work on having additional conversations on how to best improve this system, how to best capture the data that we are looking to collect and what we're using that for, and how do we facilitate and streamline that process for you all having to work on inputting this information as best possible when you have two data sets. And I think that's where, rest assured, if there is mismatch of information, that you are seeing reflected on there from the Launchboard, and if it's not matching, don't be alarmed. We're not utilizing that in any way to penalize you. It's just there for informational purposes, so that if there's numbers, you should be able to report some information. But there's also that new option to check the box if that doesn't apply, and there's a narrative component to it where you'll be able to explain. And I think for us at the state level, we'll be able to have those discussions and look at how we're going to utilize that information or that narrative that helps provide additional context. So it's all for continuous improvement. we appreciate the feedback. We'll certainly be taking all this back with us to see how we can best improve, including the EL civics separation and ESL. If it seems to be causing more pain than helping, I think that's something we can look at and maybe for the next year see what we can do to enhance that. But just rest assured that the launch board data is there for informational purposes, and you have the ability to provide a narrative explaining your rationale for the information that you're plugging in.
Perfect, thank you. And then Neil, I know Uta had asked a very similar question. So do you feel, because you had answered that in the chat, do you feel that the conversation we just had also addressed hers?
I don't know if Uta can come off mic. I think she has maybe a little different question related, but I don't know if we probably answered her. That's why if she could come off mic, she could tell us maybe specifically what she wants to have addressed.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Addressed for our smaller member, yes, the number of students is too low to like pass the threshold for launch board. That's good. The other one is for our larger member, the numbers, the pre-populated data from launch board does not match what we have in TE. So I think one option that I just heard is just explain it in the narrative. That could work.
Yeah, I think sometimes, and Jay can help us with this technical understanding. Sometimes when they're deduplicating, there could be a difference between TE and launch board. Jay, what's your experience?
I forget what timeline we used, but about a year ago, we did decide to pre-populate. So I think it's based on end of year submission. I'd have to double check to give the exact timeline of what we used. But in the earlier years, there were so many disconnects between what was thought to be the right number and what people were putting in, as there was an effort to pre-populate those numbers a little bit to keep it consistent. And a little bit, I think people liked it that way because they didn't want to figure out the number. But I'd have to look to remember the exact cutoff point of when we set that and what it entails in launch board.
So Jay, that could explain why maybe the numbers aren't aligning up.
Could be. I mean, there's a lot of ways in which numbers could get in there after the fact. I guess it would probably help to double check and find whatever that date is I think it was just based on end of year, but definitely less than 100% on when we cut that off.
Okay, thank you.
Ute, does that answer your question?
Yes, good enough. It's okay. Thank you.
All right.
But I remember in early years, there were like literally triple or quadruple the number of hours than what we were really expecting based on TE, launch board, COMIS, whatever totals. So we decided that we needed to pre-populate it because a lot of guesstimates were kind of way off.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Kathy did have a comment. It wasn't a question, but the first one is a comment that just says the launch board edition from 2021 has caused some confusion. She followed up with a question. I thought that K-12 adult schools had to use the TE program hours report for instructional hours, which Neil did answer. Yes, that is true. Let's see. I think Shannon's was just a follow-up to the launch board data discussion. Yep, that is. Okay, we do have another question. I'm just scrolling down. Okay, Kathy, one area of concern is when an agency is starting a new program and purchase equipment and materials 1 year. However, the instructional hours does not begin until the next year. Is there a way to capture these expenditures?
Well, and this is, Kathy, is this a K-12 agency or a community college agency?
It's a K-12.
Okay. So yeah, sometimes you're going to have your expenditures that aren't aligned because if you're starting up new programs. So I think we're okay with that data, the expenditure data coming in possibly later or vice versa. If you have to ramp up and then your instructional hours are coming in the next year, I think that's fine. I
So
don't,
they
I
could
don't see,
actually, I mean, it would probably fall in under the TE report.
Mhm.
I mean, we have CTE instructional hours and other programs, but if they added those expenditures, it would bump up the expenditure cost without instructional hours, or vice versa. If we do it the following year, the expenditures actually could possibly be higher than what their budget actually is because they had spent the money the previous year. So
Yeah, I guess what you could do, I mean, we don't go down to that level of detail, but at the local level, this is information that you might share with your members and your consortium. So you might want to explain that if there's notes or something, just to explain if one member's, if it looks a little bit out of the ordinary, I think just explaining it is fine.
okay, so they could go ahead and record those expenditures and
Mhm.
just kind of make note of that within our consortium.
Right, that's
Okay.
what I would do.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. And then Elsa had a question. Is workforce preparation entered in workforce reentry? And Jay did answer that in the chat. He said, yes, workforce reentry was renamed to workforce preparation 4 to 5 years ago. Stephanie has another question. She said, another question. Our K-12 member has not reported instructional hours for the past 2 years because they decided they are solely a service provider. I want to confirm this is a correct understanding.
Okay, so just a clarifying question for Stephanie. Is this K-12 member using TOPS Pro?
I don't think so.
Okay, so Jay, do you, this is a Jay question then. Jay, do you have a experience of K-12 members receiving CAEP funds that are service only? How have you seen them report into TOPS Pro, or what would you advise them to do to record, or can they record services in TOPS Pro?
You can definitely record services. However, if you do, it doesn't count as instructional hours. It's, service hours rather than instructional hours. That was that great debate topic of 1819, where half the state thought one way and the other half thought the other. And hey, Neil and Jay researched the NRS website. Gotta say it was 125% conclusive. Service hours do not count as instructional hours. For a while, we're saying do what you want, but after we looked it up, so to speak, we've been firm about that ever since.
Yeah, and
Not
Stephanie,
sure how
I
it
would
would show on program hours. I'll just say
Right.
if you're following the letter of the law, you record services and you can record every last one of them. So the student will have all kinds of service activity. But at the end of the day, if that's all you have, by definition, you have 0 instructional hours.
Right. So they wouldn't report the instructional hours, Stephanie, but something to follow up on is, with the CAEP funding formula being looked at and discussion and, possible changes, your K-12 member should really start using TOPS Pro to record all activities, including services, because those could be part of that funding formula down the road. So if they have nothing to show in the state system, then they wouldn't get any funding. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, and then we have, let me see. Kim asked, can you give the updated definition between short-term CTE and workforce reentry / workforce prep?
I can take that one if you want.
Go ahead.
So for short-term CTE, there really is no official definition. I think I've waived the 48 hours total in training before, but that's 0% official. That's just if, faced with too many questions wanting a number, hey, there's some number instead of no number at all, but that number from an official point of view means nothing. CTE and short-term CTE are just all CTE. As far as differentiating workforce prep, again, this too is very imprecise, but in general, If it focuses on a particular occupation, hey, it's nursing, it's welding, it's HVAC, then it's always CTE. If it's generic workforce, resume writing, workplace safety, or whatever, then it's workforce preparation.
Thank you, Jay. And that is the list of questions we have received in the chat. Oh, hold on. As I speak, Shannon says, a friendly suggestion, a walkthrough of the NOVA process and program area reporting in September. We have lots of new folks in our consortium and many couldn't join today. I'm going to have to walk them through individually, probably sometime this week because they are gone next week. And Shannon, thank you for that. Please know the CAEP TAP team is always here. We can schedule a Zoom call with any of your members that are able to get on. You let us know what works for you. We will do our best to accommodate that. We can get on and we can do a walkthrough of the program area reporting. We were going to do one today if there is a need for that from the field, but we can absolutely do it individually as the need arises. All you have to do is email TAP. Are there any other questions?
No, thank you for reaffirming that. We definitely want the field to know that there is extensive support with this tedious process. As Holly mentioned, if you need individualized one-on-one, we decided to make this more of a casual office hour session to be able to answer any questions that you have, but still know that if you need one-on-one support, you need to jump on NOVA and get some one-on-one guidance. We, as Holly mentioned, they're there to support and provide you with that. So please feel free to reach out outside of this office hour. There's going to continue to be that individual support. I think for next year, that is something that we can definitely consider is bringing back a webinar or a training. But just know that there's extra hours. If you need support with your TE reports, I know Jay and his team also has step-by-step that they can provide or additional office hours that they can assist with. We also have Harpreet and Jason and the CC TAP team. If you have specific questions around how to collect those hours or that data on the college side and on the K-12 side. So we want to make sure that we have you covered at all levels. And for us at the state, we certainly welcome the feedback. We're always looking at continuous efforts of improvement. So we are able to improve our systems for next year.
Thank you, Myra. And we did just have a question from Kathy. Do you still need to enter 0 in all expenditure areas that you do not have any expenditures listed?
I'm not too familiar with that, Holly. Are you familiar with?
I am. I believe you will have to. And what I can do at this point is I can go ahead and share screen and go into NOVA so that everyone can kind of see. Let me get that going. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so in order to do the program area report, I am in the sandbox. It's a safe environment, so nothing I do will change anything. We're going to go ahead and click on program area report. It's going to default to your current year, so we strongly urge you to make that change. Otherwise, there will be a whole nother layer of confusion when you click on it. So change that year. You can type in your consortium or you can just find it and click. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to use Allen Hancock. They're number 1. They always get used. From here, you will go just again, verify that the year kept to 22-23. You're going to go down and each member is listed separately. So you're going to find what member agency you are. You're going to click on it. And that's going to bring you up into this. This is the portion, again, that they did say is informational only. If it doesn't match, don't worry. You're going to come down here. For any reason you are not required to complete the program area reporting, you do have a checkbox that you will need to click and then explain why you are not required to complete that. I think most of you will be required to complete that, but you'll know if you're not. Then we go down. Let me move my Zoom controls. I apologize. We're going to go down here into the program hours. This is for the entire year. enter what hours you have based on the reports you're going to be pulling. Sorry, your total will be down here. One thing you can do is you can click on the next right here. You can click on leveraged funds once you've entered your program hours. There's also usually a next button. In the safe environment, it's not there, but typically up in the right-hand corner, there will be a next button that you can click to move on. For now, we will click leveraged funds. And this is where I think the question is coming through. So as you can see right here, if I did not have this, if I didn't have that 0 right there, it's going to throw up a red bar that says this field is required. So you will be required to enter 0 if there's no hours there. I think some of the guidance that you will see in the document states you cannot have hours of instruction without expenditures. And just to give you a quick example, when we go here to the hours of instruction, they have ASE, ESL, and short-term CTE. So in their leveraged funds, those 3 columns have been opened up for editing. They have to have expenses because they have hours in those areas. So it doesn't have to be all of them. If you don't have anything in CAEP that they're using for ASE, they simply enter a 0 and tab through. Enter your number and tab through. Again, if it's nothing, it's going to throw up an error. So enter something. If you have funding that is not listed in any of these pre-populated areas, you can go ahead and down at the bottom, you can click to add another fund. Click on the drop-down menu and you have donations, in-kind contributions, strong workforce program. You have a list of others. Click on that and you will add, let me just go ahead and click on Community College Support Services. And then click Add Selected Fund. And that row is now populated up above and open for editing in your 3 program areas that you are claiming hours in.
So Holly, quick question on Stephanie's question. They had a K-12 member, no hours of instruction, but they have CAEP funds they're using for supportive services. Would that prevent them, since they had no hours of instruction, from entering that dollar amount?
Yes, NOVA does not allow expenditures to be entered without hours of instruction. If
So
there
what should they do?
That's a question I would typically email you and Myra about. So I think that's something we can discuss.
I think before they just put in 0. But that's why we're asking again now if that's acceptable.
Right, in the guidance, under the NOVA updates on, I want to say page 2, it states, for those required to report, a 0 or greater value is required in every enabled field on the form. At least 1 instructional hour must be reported in any of the program areas. Reporting all zeros is not permitted. If there are special circumstances that arise and the system is not allowing you to report, please send us an email through CAEP Tab, and we will work on the back end to see, because it sounds like there might be some special circumstance situations, but until those arise, we'll be able to work through and see what guidance we can provide you with.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Myra. I might reach out to you when it's time to pull the trigger.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes, and if you are experiencing any one-offs in NOVA when you're submitting this and you email TAP, please include a screenshot. That is very helpful in getting down to the issue at hand, if we can forward that on to NOVA to look at.
So I guess Holly, a hack would be you could just put 1 hour and that would open it up, but we want to know those circumstances, right?
Right. We want to avoid entering anything that's not accurate. This is an accurate report. So we try to, email us and let us know what the issue is. We will work with CAEP leadership to get that resolved for you. But I wouldn't enter anything that's not factual.
If I'm not mistaken, I think, but we'll have to test it, but we'll be able to verify. If I'm not mistaken, if you go back to the program area hours and you check the box where I'm not required to complete, that allows you to bypass that, put in your narrative, but it should still allow you to complete the leverage funds. And we did that because there are some very rare circumstances where maybe a member is no longer providing hours of instruction, but they still had funds to report. So if it is populating this, then we'll certainly be, because we know that there are going to be some of those very special circumstance situations. But if that doesn't bypass it, then we'll be able to provide you with specific guidance on what you can do in those circumstances.
Yes, and I did just click that box. It just put NAs in all of the funding categories. So absolutely, please send that email to TAP, and we will work with the leadership team to get that resolved for you. Oh, my next button has shown up here. So once you're done with the leveraged funds, and feel free to interrupt me, Neil, if you see any questions come in. I can't read the chat while I'm sharing screen.
Oh, okay. There is a question from Shannon. Can you talk a little bit about in-kind examples? So in-kind examples could be anything non-monetary. So like sharing of classroom space. What else could be? I don't know. Other people probably have examples. I could go back to, I think we have some examples based on the federal definition. But there is a long list, I think, in the guidance that talks about what in-kind is, but that would be anything not covered by the expenditures. And so kind of like, loaning space, referrals, anything like that would be considered in-kind. But I could probably go into a little more detail after I look at the federal definition. But Myra, anything to add on in-kind?
Yes, it's on page 7 of the guidance. It specifies, I did post a small snippet of what is in the guidance in the chat, but if you refer to page 7 of the guidance, you'll be able to get the federal definition of in-kind contribution and examples.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I just saw that. I haven't read through it all, but does it talk about how to like create an amount? So specifically for like sharing of the classroom, that's typically what we have in-kind for.
I think, Shannon, what we do on the federal monitoring side with in-kind is we use the same federal definition, and then you just have to provide, if we ever reviewed you for federal funding, this wouldn't happen with CAEP, but you would have to provide your methodology of how you came up with that amount. And so you could use whatever the district uses, because I'm sure the districts get federal funding for other programs in the district at the K-12 level or whatever. So there is probably a standard methodology the district uses to determine in-kind or costs associated with those in-kind related items. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. So once you're done with your leveraged funds section, you can either click the preview button, or in the top right, you can click next. I will go ahead and click next. And then that's just showing me the preview of everything I've done. In the past, you had to submit estimates. That is no longer required. That is why you do not see that here. So now you just have submit actuals. And once you do, you just want to verify that everything here is what you meant for it to be. And then you go up to the top and you click submit actuals. You will get a message. Are you sure you'd like to submit this report? This indicates that the values are correct and are ready for certification. If you are sure, click submit. And you see a little gray submitted at the top next to the consortium, next to the agency name. That is it. If you're working on it and you have problems, feel free to reach out to TAP. We can always assist. There is no certification by your consortia lead. The member submitting is the certification. It's a submit/certification by each member representative. So that should be everything you need to know. Do we have any questions?
We do have one from, who was it? Janae, I think. I'm trying to find it. Do you see that one, Holly?
I'm coming up. I see a long one. No, let me see. Yes, maybe this was already covered. Just wondering why the auto-populated launch board data for the 22-23 instructional hours report is for 2021 and not 21-22.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and someone was able to point that out already. So we're going to go back. No particular reason. I think it might have just not been updated. So I will go back in and take a look and make sure that that gets updated. But whether it's 2020, 2021, 21, 22, just a reminder that it's there for informational purposes. If it's flagging to let you know that you do have some hours showing up in the launch board, it's more of a courtesy to let you know that there should be some hours reported. But we will go back in and make sure that gets updated.
Okay, and then I see Janae had another question. Is the state looking at this data as a way to inform any changes to the funding model for CAEP? If so, for agencies who use the majority of their funds for wraparound transition services, will this reflect poorly on the consortium overall?
Well, we're not really involved in the inner workings of the discussions on the new funding formula. If legislation is put forward, we'll look at it. But as far as crafting that legislation, we're not really involved in that. I don't know, Myra, if you've had any discussions on the funding formula, but we tend to, on the CDE side, tend to stay out of it until legislation is proposed.
Right, that is correct. As a state agency, so we are not partaking in the political discussion. At this time, we are working based off of what is in legislation and continuing to release our funds annually based on what has been enacted since 2015. And so as far as the state utilizing, we are currently focused on the process for this. And so that's one of the reasons why we say we're open to continuous improvement. I think at the state level, we are also asking questions of the purpose, of collecting this. If we are putting you all through that headache of collecting this granular level of detail, we certainly want to be able to pinpoint and say what this data collection is being utilized for. So that is something that we are interested in looking at further and having those discussions with our sister agency and see how we can best improve this process. What is the purpose? What is it? How useful is it for you all and at the state level and why we're utilizing this data. But at this point in time, it's not being utilized to develop a new funding formula.
Yeah, and if you are interested in that conversation, there's ACE, which is for non-credit administrators and faculty, and then you have CCAE for administrators and teachers and classified on the K-12 adult side. So I think they're having those conversations. So you can always bring up, if you have questions about transition services, things like that, if they're not reflected in the current proposed formula by the legislature, then those are the type of conversations you should be having at the local level with those organizations, because they're going to be influencing that legislation that goes forward.
Okay, thank you. And then Ramona asked, what are we supposed to enter in the EL Civics column of the leveraged funds report? Do we report all of the expenses in the ESL column? And I know Jay had to leave, but earlier Jay said yes, everything for K-12 gets put into ESL, correct, Neil and Myra?
Well, if on the expenditure side, you don't have a way of breaking it out, then you could put it all in ESL. If you receive specific funding for EL Civics and you can break it out, you could break it out on the leverage fund side, but you won't get in trouble or be penalized for putting it all in ESL if you can't break that out. Myra, on the college side?
Yeah, I would say similar. I know I've heard I guess it just depends on how at the local level they've accounted for that. Some are probably going to input it in the ESL section. Some will be able to account for it on the EL Civics. And so I think even just as the guidance states, you know, your best estimates and where you're able to capture that. So I think similar, wherever you're able to best reflect that. I think for us, we'll look at how that distribution or that separation is actually helping, if it's helpful for us at the state level to have that data be collected separately. We were able to reaffirm that, at least with TE, you are able to run those reports and in some instances have some of that data, but it's something that we can take back. For now, report as best possible as you can in separating that. And then, you know, whether you're going to report it under ESL or EL Civics, you won't be penalized for that.
Thank you, Myra. And then Michael asked, and I know that there's a follow-up, Michael, I do see that, so I'll read it all as one. I'm sorry if I missed this, but where should apportionment go for community college in the leveraged funds sheets in NOVA? And then let me just scroll down. He says, I found it. Non-credit apportionment. Standard non-credit apportionment to community colleges for serving students in non-credit courses and programs. This would not include non-credit programs outside of the 7 CAEP program areas. And so I think, okay, correct. Thank you. I'm still scrolling down.
So Myra, just to clarify, we're only reporting non-credit in the 7 program areas, and then any leverage funds associated with those program areas. If it's not related to our program area, then they shouldn't be reporting it, correct?
That is correct, yeah. And it's also indicated in the memo as well.
Perfect, thank you. That's all the questions we've received in the chat. Does anyone have oh, hold on. Kim said Pearson View Center expenditures, non-CAEP funded. Should we list under fees or contracted services?
So that is so wait, those are those those are expenditures. Okay, contract expenditures, but that would be part of your, so you don't use CAEP funds to pay for Pearson View, Kim? Or you don't use WEO2 or anything like that?
No.
Okay. So then, yeah, you would put it under, I guess, if it's a contract with them, I guess you would use contracted services. It's not really fees because they're not charging you a fee, or I don't know, it'd be best to put it under contracted services. So I guess you use a different fund source other than WIOA and CAEP. So I guess whatever other fund source, if it doesn't fit the list, then use whatever fits best. That's a tricky one.
Great. So that is all the questions we have, and we are about at time. I did drop. Does anyone have any last minute questions that you need to get in before
I have a question, but it's more for my bookkeeper. She said that in the past, ASC and ABE were together, being reported together, so it was easier for her to run the report because it was just one report under that budget code. And this time it was separated, so she had to put in a few more hours into separating ABE from ASC. So just a question, is there a different budget code that we should be using? Or she was just wondering if there was a different budget that went just for ABE and just for ASC so that it's easier. This is her.
Neil?
I was answering another question. What was Holly, what was the question again?
I'm so sorry. I am also sick and I apologize. In years past, ABE and ASC have been together as one, and this year they are separated. So the budget person had to put in some extra work. And then Elsa, I'm sorry, can you ask the second part of that again? I was in the middle of a coughing fit.
She was just wondering if there's a different budget code that she should be using for ASC, or because right now we're using all the same budget code, right? So she had to put in a little extra work into running the report because the report comes under one budget code but then she had to figure out what was ABE and what was ASE.
Yeah, what I would do in that circumstance, if it's not broken out, you could just take the program hours and the percentages between ASC and ABE and do a split to separate those funds, rather than do a very tedious, time-consuming accounting if you don't have it separated by code. Just doing a percentage split and estimate would probably be a lot easier than probably what they went through. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes sense to me, but I don't know how I'm gonna explain that to her.
So, and I
Yeah.
do see that Kristen put in here that they do not use a different resource code for ABE and ASC. They are combined in fiscal. So probably in the same situation.
Yeah, so just using a estimate based on your hours of instruction would be the easiest way to separate those out. Now, accounting people are very particular and technical in making sure that it's down to, the penny. So you could give them that flexibility. If they want to go through all the trouble of making it exact, that would be on them. But we're comfortable with estimates based on, student population, hours of instruction, those kind of things, to separate that out.
Okay, thank you. Tim asked an unrelated question. Will there be a training on the carryover report in Nova? Myra did answer, yes, Nova training will be coming in early January. And I think that sums up all the questions we've had. I'm going to go ahead and drop the evaluation link in the chat for those that are still with us. If you could please spend just a couple seconds to give us some feedback on today's office hours. I hope it's answered all your questions and met all your needs. Again, if you, this is being recorded, we are going to post it. I just received a question directly about where to find this recording. Because this is very time sensitive, we are going to go ahead and get it posted to the website for you with a disclaimer that it is not remediated. Possibly we can just email it all to you directly. If you registered, I can absolutely send you the Zoom link. That'll be good for 90 days with that. So it will be made available to you. And if you have any follow-up questions, anything that comes to mind 2 seconds after we close out Zoom, if you're like me, go ahead and email TAP. We will get that answered. And if we don't have the answer, we will reach out to CAEP leadership to get that answer for you. If you need one-on-one walkthroughs with your team through Nova, reach out to us. We can get that scheduled and help get the training out for you to your staff and to your members. With that is everything I have. Neil and Myra, the other CAEP TAP team, anything else in wrapping up?
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. Please reach out to us and TAP if you have any questions. Appreciate the feedback, pain points. We certainly take that information back and we'll do what we can to improve our processes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Everyone have a good rest of your day. Bye.